Hello all, thank you everyone for attending our webinar, Achieve Programmatic Success Through a Multi-Channel Approach. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items to cover and then we can get underway with the webinar. We're happy to field any questions you might have at the end of the content that we're about to go through, so please feel free to place them in the questions area of the GoToWebinar panel and we will address them at the end of the Q&A. If there are any questions that we're not able to address in that time, we will of course follow up directly with you after the webinar. Just to make you all aware that this webinar is being recorded, so it will be shared shortly after we end. We're not focusing on slides in this session, but really want to have an open discussion around key factors that all play into the programmatic world and achieving success within it. So firstly, I guess we should kick off with some introductions. I'm Kat Duffield, Senior Sales Manager and Team Lead at StackAdapt. And lucky for me, with me today is actually in the flesh, so we can just
each other
for the first time. Is my friend in the industry, lovely Leslie Duncan, who's the Strategy Director at Assembly.
Hi.
So both of us are actually here based in London, as I said, in the same office, which is surreal. It's been a long time. I appreciate this is slightly different format to the webinars we've become used to over the past 18 months or so, but I felt we had to take advantage of being able to be back in the same room again. Leslie and I have worked together a fair amount over the years in our different roles within the digital advertising industry. So thought it'd be great to get the perspective of someone of her experience as we walk through today's topics. Just to flag as well, so obviously we're not on a panel in a room full of people, so we'll obviously potentially be glancing at one another, but trying to talk as if we can see you through the screens as much as possible.
Yeah, so obviously thanks for the invite, and as I say, it's really good to see you face to face.
Great. I mean, how's it been for you during COVID?
I mean, how's it been for everyone, right? I mean, originally for everyone, it just turned our lives upside down. I think for me personally, the main struggle was working from home. I'm someone that like prefers being in the office, the environment, collaboration, and I think like it really hit me hard to be like just me, my screen, and no one else. Obviously we've kind of adapted from that now, but from a business perspective, we went through a big restructure. We've obviously recently merged, which is now we're at the amazing Assembly, which is super exciting. But I mean, for us in general, because digital is at the heart of our business, it was kind of like it played to our strengths in the sense of we were able to really kind of accelerate that growth. I think there was a study from Bain basically saying that in 10 years there was only a 1% digital acceleration, but in the first 8 weeks of April last year there was 10%, so went from 18% to 28%. So yeah, digital is where it's happening basically, and COVID helped us, so we've got to look at the positives as far as I'm concerned.
100%. So how did you as an agency weather the storm? Obviously you had some crazy changes as a business.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of grit, determination, like helping each other out. We did a lot of like remote socials. I know like everyone got sick of the pub quiz by a certain point, but we're quite good in the sense of like we've got a good like culture and community, and I think a lot was invested in people's like training, development. We had some wellness days, which was really good to really focus on the kind of like well-being side of things. I know we couldn't travel, but yeah, overall there was a lot more support and of course flexible working in terms of hours and days and stuff like that. So yeah, it was good. What about, well, I say good, but
good as it can be.
How about you? How's lockdown been for you and StackAdapt?
It's been amazing, to be honest. I have to say, yeah, I've not known a business to be able to take a full advantage of the opportunities in regards to expansion and the investment and the risk probably taken to grow the business the way we have throughout such a big pandemic and for the duration it's been going on for. But yeah, I mean, you know, also a huge thing for us as a business was towards the end of last year making the decision to become remote first. You know, really getting against that opinion that you're not as successful, you're not as hardworking when you're working from home, and actually showing that, you know, it's been really nice for us to start coming together occasionally in the shared office environment that we have, but predominantly, yeah, we're all work from home, and it's it's been a nice balance. I feel like I'm now in my 30s and I finally have a work-life balance, which is really nice. So, and it definitely gets the best out of everybody, I think, as well.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, similar to you as well, just working with good people, knowledgeable people in a business that really wants to do well and do it right.
Yeah.
I think. Cool. Well, I mean, as I said, it's great to be doing this with you. Obviously having you here, or me here, because I'm in your office. Thank you for having us. So I guess the best thing is to just jump straight in, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, I mean, first questions, just delve straight into it, is to how do agencies approach the conversation to new brands around programmatic?
Broad question, like no time like the present in terms of getting stuck right in, but I think it's worth everyone kind of like understanding what programmatic actually is. Like, first and foremost, like typically it used to be seen as like a display channel, really like direct response led, and to be fair, it's probably true like about 5 years ago, but it's like so much more than that now. Like, from the different channels that you can effectively buy programmatically, to the creative, to the data, like it's definitely not just DR, and it's definitely not display. You've got anything from audio to native, obviously out of home now, and I think it's worth people just like remembering that the fact that programmatic isn't a channel, it's just a buying method, and effectively pretty much all media types, even actually TV with OTT and connected TV, is going to be bought programmatically in some form.
Okay, cool. I mean, so we know that within the digital ecosystem, we work in a highly commoditized space. I mean, we were talking about the slide that everyone shows, right?
The Lumascape.
Yeah, that just shows the madness of the industry that we're now in. But how do you approach new or current clients even that are new to this space?
To be honest, the realization is there's no silver bullet, so you have to kind of take every brand, every industry, and to its extent verticals, like in a bespoke way. Yes, you can have frameworks and certain approaches, but there's unfortunately no silver bullet, and I think that's why you have market leaders, and why market leaders change over time in the sense of how are they doing things differently. But first and foremost is obviously understanding what the business objectives are. Like, are they looking to achieve growth and scale, or is it efficiency and revenue? I think most clients would probably say both. Always, it's like every single metric can we possibly do, in which case like holistic planning is so important. And I think the measurement framework, like, again, as I was saying, like frameworks are there for guidelines. It's the way to like create structure, and it's really important to have that measurement framework in place. I think also in terms of like who are the decision makers, like who are going to be the budget, who holds the budget pots. I think obviously a lot more brands and clients now have like CMOs who are a lot more savvy than they used to be, and they understand the fact that it is worth investing in digital. The other thing is tech stack. Like, we see, especially when you're new to programmatic, I think obviously most clients and brands like would have dabbled in it, but sometimes like they have loads of tech that they don't actually need, or they've like sold loads of like a DMP or a big creative management platform. And actually sometimes for people that are new, it's like having the keys to the Ferrari and not knowing how to drive. Like, you have all of this tech and like not know what to do with it. And then the final piece I would say is like content and creative, and making sure that that is like taken into consideration when you think about your approach to programmatic.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely touch on that later as well in regards to the content creative piece, because it's definitely really interesting. I mean, what do you think are the common blind spots in clients' digital or programmatic strategies?
Common blind spots. I mean, to be honest, they come in all shapes and sizes, realistically, and I always see them as fun challenges. But I suppose things like audiences, not taking advantage of all the touch points, and especially obviously in the future, in terms of making sure that where you can possibly measure, you are measuring and tracking. I think, like we kind of mentioned around the fact that creative, like if you don't have the right creative for that particular media, you can very quickly see that. So if it's like a landscape video and it should be a horizontal or a vertical video, you can see kind of how that come to play. I think also in terms of research, like especially a common blind spot is that if brands and clients aren't looking at their consumer insights enough, you know, there's a lot of missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
And then I would say about competitors, like you have to have your finger on the pulse when it comes to monitoring your competitors, because you know, you want to know how they're bidding against you, how they're going to market, what mediums they're doing. And even if it's not to obviously do what they do, that's a tactic in order to do what they're not doing and obviously cut through the market, but in authentic and surprising places.
Yeah, I think like flagging the competitor side is definitely so key. Like
100%.
To not be aware of that sometimes can be detrimental, and you're potentially either you're spending budget and they've spent double and you're not going to get your share of voice. So like, how can you better invest?
Exactly. You need to know in terms of, and coming back to the objectives, like if you understand what your competitors are doing or your immediate competitors, and then you also want to look at your aspirational competitors as well. You're going to usually have typically your immediate ones, and then you can see how you can really move the dial, and as you say, increase that share of voice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do you still run into clients who feel programmatic is too much of a black box, if we like? If so, you know, what measures do you take to reassure clients the industry has changed and that it's, you know, like really come a long way in the last, what, 3 to 5 years?
I mean, to be honest, not as much as we used to. Like, I think, you know, gone are the days of black box, of remnant inventory, and to be honest, like, most of them players aren't really around anymore. Not to throw shade, but they're not.
And never worked anywhere.
Yeah. But I think, brands and agencies, like, we're all savvy to it at the end of the day. Like, we want to know who our audiences are. We want to know, like, what sites we're running on, like what are the devices that work really well and the locations. So you know, we have to think about what our media strategy is, and actually having that visibility and transparency that you get from obviously DSPs like yourself really enables us to think about our other channels and how we can take learnings from programmatic into other channels, and obviously vice versa. You've got the standard tactics like whitelist, blacklist, negative keywords, and then pre and post blockers and things like that. But yeah, I would say that, you know, there's a lot way to go around it with PG deals, PMPs, etc. So yeah, I think it has ultimately removed some of that risk with open web.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you mentioned you've worked at your fair share of DSPs. Like, how has like StackAdapt been tackling this in terms of the blind spots and stuff?
Yes, I have definitely been at a couple of other DSPs, some that have dealt with the black box branding better than others, I would say. It's not my fault. But yeah, a big thing that actually attracted me to joining StackAdapt was its automated uptake on things like protecting the brands that come on board with us. So we're partnered with Moat, and that's like an automated thing as part of our platform. Every client gets that. And then it's things like, you know, for years it's always been an exclusion list or a blacklist, and then the rest of the internet's the oyster for trying to drive performance, whatever it might be. StackAdapt have taken a really different approach, which is a lot more time heavy, takes a lot more investment, but actually we go on basis of an inclusion list. So, you know, we've got 55,000 plus like apps and sites that have all been pre-vetted, that we're comfortable with actually allowing our brands to run across and to drive our campaigns across that. We also partner with all the major SSPs to be able to, you know, still get the scale that we need. But obviously, I also love the fact that, you know, whether you're delivering thousands of impressions or one impression, we can report back right on that domain level. So the transparency is really there. And, you know, in a role I was in maybe 3-4 years ago, that definitely wasn't the case. So I think it's, you know, we've had to move with the times. The industry has had to try and make sure that, you know, as clients have become more savvy, it's not to say that before it was being delivered in like a shady environment, but if we couldn't actually provide you where it was being delivered, it automatically like builds that distrust, I guess. So I love the honesty and the openness of our platform.
Yeah, I think when you say about domain, it's really interesting because, you know, in the future as well, you want to be able to set up those strategic partnerships, and effectively working with DSP, it kind of like fast tracks you to know which domains, which partners. You know, publishers themselves are becoming like whole ecosystems where they're running their own data. So yeah, I think it's almost like a building block to holistic planning.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think like even just tagging on to that, like the difference that we're seeing, I almost feel like we're starting to go full cycle, you know, as I will touch on it, but with regards to cookieless stuff, you know, like, you know, me from starting off on a publisher side, and that's a whole different world where, you know, you're being specific about the exact environment, and DSPs come in, and I think, you know, we've gone from network to that, and it's all shifting around, and you can start to see the cogs grinding to kind of go back in a certain way. So yeah, I think the great thing is seeing how the ad techs out there, and including StackAdapt, are like evolving to ensure that we're delivering on that front as well.
Yeah, has to really.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So how do you measure impact for programmatic for your clients' campaigns?
Like various ways. I think I mentioned earlier about making sure you have a solid measurement framework. It's really important to think about attribution. Most brands, especially ones that are more digitally mature, don't necessarily solely make budget decisions on last click. And I think it's more about making sure you are thinking about what is that value of that view, that impression. And, you know, I think by having a solid framework and thinking about different models, so different models like MMM or DDA, and when I say like
love an acronym,
I know it's like it's the display, the programmatic world is like acronym central, but media mix modeling and data-driven attribution. But yeah, that's effectively what we do, is that, you know, we don't just purely go, oh yeah, it's performance, it runs on this. It's about incremental reach, and I think that's another thing that we do, is about incrementality testing, or like cause and impact on cause and effect testing, to make sure that we do really understand people that have been exposed to the campaign, how is that impact versus people that haven't been exposed. And I think that's really the key to measuring programmatic.
Cool. Okay, thanks. That's really insightful. I think it's definitely always is such an important area to make sure that, you know, what you're actually doing has results that you need, so that you can plan for future campaigns as well, right? Not just on the feedback of what you've just done. But I mean, kind of going off kilter slightly here, but I mean, we both know everyone loves a media first. I'm sure I would struggle to count how many times I've had these conversations with your teams over the years. But how do you make a decision about when it's the right time to test a new channel? You know, is it dependent on the budget, KPIs? Is relationship and trust with a partner or a DSP like really key about going down that avenue?
Yeah, I mean, we was actually laughing about it this morning in the office. We were just like, how can we get these media first? It's like big, bold, different, like, you know, the market's moving one way and it's getting more creative, it's getting more like using the metaverse, using experiential. So yeah, everyone does have a media first. I agree with that. But yeah, I would say it's about pushing the boundaries, right? It's about being really responsive and really quick to market. Like, something that we've always found is when you have alphas and betas, sometimes media is cheaper. Like, yes, okay, the tech might not be as well oiled, or like there might be some teething problems, but typically alphas and betas, if you can get to market really quickly, they like pay dividends because no one else is doing that. I would also say, in terms of like defining what innovation actually is, like innovation doesn't have to just be about creativity. It can be about data, it can be about placement, it can be about tech.
That's true.
And I would say, like, bespoke opportunities, like we try and be really proactive. So if it's like a big campaign coming up, we would like collaborate and see if there's anything that we can ultimately rip up the rule book and start again. How can we be different in terms of our timing? But I would say overall that comes through partnerships and making sure that you do have that relationship to be able to, dare I say it, pick up the phone or Slack or Teams or whichever way of communication, WhatsApp, to be able to get that and get those kind of media first quickly. I think having joint business plans is a really good one as well. But like what we see is kind of what comes with media first is that PR element.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, you want to be able to create a buzz, you want to be spoken about on social media, you want to kind of like see the kind of media that you're running. So yeah, I think proactivity, trust, and yeah, relationships.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, definitely on the PR piece, I've done my fair share, I think, over the years, but you see the benefits of it because it's, you know, not only you're able to obviously promote the success of the client and the work you've done, but obviously, you know, promote the work that you've done as an agency or as well as a partner to be able to work that hand in hand. But yeah, I guess, you know, our working relationship is proof of that type of work over the years as well.
Case studies, award entries, everyone wants that, don't they?
I think they just like the nights that you party on them, but yeah. So, I mean, I guess we should address the elephant in the room that is the cookieless world that is forever hanging over everyone's heads at the moment. So, I mean, got a big reason why I joined StackAdapt and its proactive approach, I guess, in bringing, you know, their own proprietary contextual targeting tools to their client base actually before the cookieless deadline that we thought was earlier in this year. I mean, obviously we know now at the moment this has been pushed back to 2023. I'm personally quite confident with the tech geniuses in our industry, you know, that we're going to have more and more solutions come through. It's going to continue to evolve. You know, it's like 6 months out of this business and suddenly you feel like you're starting from scratch. It moves at a rate of knots. But what's been your main concerns around the cookieless world ahead of us? How have you been approaching that conversation with your clients?
I mean, to be honest, obviously the dreaded cookie conversation. I mean, I'm no expert and it's definitely not my domain. But I said domain, it's more, I think, about modeling and making sure, you know, today we're preparing in the sense of like, you know, we know what publishers work, we know what creatives work. I think lookalike modeling is something that, or act alike or similar audiences, they all do and mean the same thing ultimately. But I think those are the ones that are going to continue, and cohort. So anyone that has similar behaviour, obviously it's not identifiable, but packaging different cohorts into effectively your audiences. I think at the moment it's something like 60% of all Chrome users are targeted, and then in the future, when obviously it comes into play, it goes down to, or they're expecting it to go down to about 5%. So Firefox, Chrome, Safari, you're only going to be able to target around 5%, and that just shows you that like there's 95% of like the internet that we're not going to be able to target. So it's a big deal, really.
A daunting world,
I know, daunting, but yeah, nothing to kind of like from our perspective, how we're approaching it is like we need to be we need to be able to be agile and adapt to the change that when it comes. Like, yes, we can prepare, but it's really about making sure we're getting the techniques like done now. So things like contextual targeting and really like increasing and growing our clients' first party data, and really going, how can we make sure that mindset is correct in our clients' eyes? Because we do sometimes see that like internally clients teams are not talking to each other, and if like marketing spoke to data or business intelligence or PR, they could internally be doing a lot more to also prepare for that. It just comes down to education, really.
Sure. So I guess, I mean, on that, like, what can partners like StackAdapt and your other partners out there like do to support Assembly and other agencies, you know, and clients around this?
I kind of mentioned it, education. Unless you have like a magic wand or a crystal ball, that wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, I would say just keeping us informed, really. You know, learning and education sessions are really good. I think they're like good ways to like, you know, have a debate about it, or if you're like got press releases, I think is always fundamental. I would also say that in terms of product development, so, you know, as an agency, you know, to an extent, we are limited by the partners and the tech of others. I mean, we personally have our own proprietary technology called Stage, which we have a whole big roadmap. We have some stuff called shelf share, alerts, we have data sets, we have like feeds, tools called Forge. So we do have some proprietary technology, however, making sure that our partners like tech roadmap is there like further integrations is definitely going to be key, and then of course it will come down to customer experience as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always find it seems so obvious because they've been going on for years and years, but lunch and learns.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know what I mean? Or whether it's in a breakfast or whatever, but you know, sit around a table, get fed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be able to do like a 20-minute presentation of this is an update. Because I often find when we do like the update emails, whatever, you know, you guys get hundreds of emails a day that
email broadcasts.
It can get lost, right? Whereas if we actually can get in front of you guys, and obviously it's a different situation to what we were used to 18 months ago, but I think sometimes it's almost easier to get people into that meeting now because of the fact that people just dial in from their laptops. They've not got to get back from other meetings and everything. So no, that's a really good point to make.
I think as well, like this webinar, things are recorded, and having someone tell you versus reading, sometimes that actually goes in more. Well, it does for me anyway.
Let's hope so.
When you write it down, and you can always refer back to it. But I kind of mentioned as well, like as I mentioned, techniques like contextual targeting. Like I think that's going to be a big one. Like from your side, like how are you delivering things like that to prepare?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess our main contextual targeting tool that I kind of touched on but didn't go into is probably page context AI. So, we basically are able to have an opportunity, one of our targeting tactics, all proprietary, where we can list out in context and out of context phrases and be able to build out like targeting pools off of that. So, whereas most of our other targeting tactics that all the other partners use, and we've got specific ones to ourselves, are more audience based. This is like 100% like cookieless contextual environments. So you're actually reaching people in the right environments to your brand or your messaging versus based on what they're actually consuming. What I'm finding really interesting is obviously we launched this and got our skates on and get it out to market at the start of the year, but even though we still have all the cookie data that we can work with, we're actually finding the results from contextual targeting like really positive on a lot of our campaigns. Obviously campaign by campaign basis based on your KPIs, etc. But at times we're seeing like actual better results on that front because of like the environments that it's within, and that people, you know, I think also not only you might be driving better like lands to page, whatever, but I always feel like when you're in a good environment for your brand, it develops like that halo, if you like, of what you're doing. So I think we've got a really good balance at the moment. And I know, like, you know, the team are forever building out like extensions of that as well and other methods. So yeah, I'd say watch this space, because I think we'll be coming to market with some like adaptations and improvements on that side as well.
Great, exciting.
Yeah, let's hope so. So I mean, obviously we've said it, with companies being faced with, you know, more targeted and measurement challenges. You know, GDPR was the first, obviously death of the cookie we've touched on, but you know, what other elements do you think advertisers should be focused on to ensure performance?
I think, to be honest, I mentioned it again, like not to dwell on it, but creative is so important. Like there's this old study that it genuinely is still at the forefront of my mind from Nielsen. I think it's a few years old now, but it's like 47% or creative effectively influences ad effectiveness, 47%, and it kind of shows you, and that's ahead of brand, ahead of targeting, ahead of reach. So if you think about how can you be really effective, like that, it is got to be through creative, like your brand, your story, what you're selling, what you're offering, like that has to come through. And I think that in terms of like, you know, first impression counts, like in people, like we're a people business at the end of the day, and it should be treated in the same way, digital, like whether it's your app, whether it's, you know, your store, it doesn't have to be pure play digital, but your experience that you get in store is really fundamental. And again, that comes back down to creative. I think, you know, if you can target, if you've got the like effectively the budget for it, like the more channels that you target, it has a multiplier effect, as you say, that kind of halo effect.
No, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know, what do you think on like creative, how are you supporting like clients and agencies in this space when it comes to creative?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to DSPs, it's quite, I've not experienced it before. Obviously, publisher side I have, but definitely not on the ad tech platform side. That support in that creative side, but something that StackAdapt's kind of invested in, like our kind of go-to-market is very much, you know, like customer service support. How can we kind of help you get to where you need to be? So we have our team Creative Studios, led by the wonderful Jess, and yeah, in regards to what we're able to offer, they're great for anything from, you know, you've got some clients that might just need help like adapting native ads to display, for example, or just ideas and ad consultations. So, you know, you've probably got your own creative partners, but are we able to help with regards to campaign ideas and brainstorm in that sense? But I mean, I'm working with them quite a bit at the moment with regards to obviously the build up to Black Friday, Christmas sales, everything that comes along with that, and really looking at how we can generate some really great, like, rich media products that just run throughout, you know, the standard ad slots, but actually drive things up a bit more. And yeah, it's exactly that, like being able to make sure everything from helping clients with their ads perhaps don't have the most obvious call to action, and offering to help and amend those and supply them to save them time and money. But yeah, for me, obviously I love the rich media builds and the exciting stuff that we can do there, whether it's dynamic retargeting or, you know, countdowns for Black Friday, whatever it might be. But yeah, to have that support there involved like so easily within campaigns, like StackAdapt, although it's grown from like 20, I think we had like 7 people in the UK like in December last year. We're going to be over 27, or we already are, I think. And as a business, we're over 400 already. But we're still very much that startup mentality of, you know, I literally messaged our CEO like this morning about something, like, I mean, obviously I had to wait for him to wake up in Canada, but you know, it's that ability that everybody, it's all hands on board. It's really, yeah, it's just a great setup. And I think that creative side is, like you said, where it's so key for clients to be able to actually offer that support. Is really good.
Yeah, no, it's really important.
I mean, you've obviously got a super strong client base, and obviously a great experience, not just here, but in your past roles with multi-channel strategy campaigns. So what do you believe are the true benefits of brands partnering with an agency that's set up with digital experts versus perhaps brands working in-house?
To be honest, like, we work with both. Like, I would say at Assembly, we're very adapted to our clients' needs. So we've got, you know, some clients that have like full retainers and it's just like, I don't know, 100 people working on an account, or we've got ones that, you know, are very like specific. One, we have helped clients in-house, like, and in the sense of if there's like particular things that they feel really comfortable and confident with, we then allow them and encourage them, to be honest, to take things in-house that they can obviously service. I think that we also have a consultancy arm. So we've got a great bunch of like very full leadership. They've got technical people, data science people, and it really enables us to work on a project basis. So if there didn't have to have so many commitments to certain things. So yeah, I would say that we're really flexible as an agency, and as I say, if anything, encourage clients where possible to take certain elements in-house, because ultimately you're still going to have that specialism. You still have to have, you know, business intelligent people. You still have to have like people that are looking into your creative, your data, or like your overall budgets or forecasting. So I think, you know, the skill set doesn't, you know, all right, you've got you've got AI and you've got like algorithms to an extent, like automation does take some of the heavy lifting away, but ultimately not everyone can be generalist. You still have to have that specialism, that
expertise. No, I totally agree.
But I mean, you mentioned obviously like multiple channels. Like, what do you think the benefits for clients or agencies to run those kind of strategies under one roof, or in your obviously case in one platform?
I mean the obvious initial things are, you know, you then get seamless retargeting. So if you're running, you know, your video, your display, your native, maybe even your connected TV together, that you can actually optimize between those, be able to retarget efficiently. You're building your learnings really strongly all under one hat, so that, you know, the more that you're running, whether it's ad hoc or always on or a combination of the two and across different channels, the learnings you get from the audiences react. You start to learn about creatives, what hits home, what doesn't. But so really that ability to build out a full funnel strategy. I'm afraid funnel as the word is going to come up quite a few times. I apologize now. No one's come up with a better term in the time I've been in this industry.
I think ecosystem.
Oh, okay. We'll see if I can flip as we go through.
It's a circular thing. Like, it's not to top to bottom, because effectively you're constantly in that mindset.
That's true.
Like if you think that you could like buy a pair of shoes and then I go to fashion straight away. That's where my head goes. But you know, you could be buying something, just bought something, but you know, you're still in market for another type of product. So I just think that it isn't full funnel. It's like a continuous, almost like loop where you go up and down, and it depends on what buying state that you're in, what creatives you should do. But yeah, I know full funnel is the easiest way to describe it.
But I mean, I guess aside from that as well, you know, the tech industry, like I definitely didn't start on it. I think I started I started out in national press, and I've kind of moved with the times as the industry's like evolved. But you know, it can be a lot when you've got different partners, different platforms, etc. This is one platform that you've got to learn and navigate, one reporting tool as well. So overall, I think if you're a business that's time short, and this is something that, you know,
we are one.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, we learned that this morning, but like with regards to that, you know, trying to make things as smooth and easy as possible, and that's StackAdapt's platform as an example is just like the UI of it, like it is so user friendly, and is set for you to be able to self-serve. Like even I could go in it and probably set up a campaign, even me. Which is saying something. My boss would second that, because I'm probably the only one that forgets my passwords all the time. But I mean, something I did want to touch on is obviously the benefits of, you know, planning around ad hoc for brand campaigns, how we can support and advise on these. So, you know, I am sometimes asked, you know, why should we invest in the like always on method when actually we just want to do here and there? Like, what's the point of that? And for me, it's like, you know, I personally treat them kind of separately, but dependent on the particular brand. So obviously always on, the one thing you need to understand automatically from programmatic is you're very rarely going to suddenly get results overnight, right? Like the technology needs time to learn, but once it does, you should start to see improvements month on month in regards to the audience you reach. And I think it provides, as I've said before, like amazing learnings in regards to who's actually interacting with what you do. And then the ad hoc side tends to come along more with the brand element of, you know, whether it's sales or launches or whatever it might be, and you want to make a bigger impact. Perhaps you've got like a message around the whole COP26 or whatever it might be that you want to show support, so you've got specific messages. And then that's where you can really pull into this like multi-channel strategy as well, about the fact that, okay, I'm going to use these elements for this, and then how can I tie these audience together?
I agree with that.
Cool.
The only thing that I would say in terms of like how always on versus like campaign planning is really, I think that, you know, years ago you used to be able to understand the trends, and you didn't get too many kind of like red herrings would come up. Like, you know, there's a lot of trends that you could kind of like plan quite effectively, but now we have to be so agile. Like even the data from this time last year, we can't really kind of plan accurately because stores were open. Like you mentioned, obviously Cyber Week end that's coming up. Like this time last year, it was still online, but now this time there's this hybrid model of people might be shopping in store, they might be shopping online, they might be doing both, and more than likely like they'd be doing both. So it's how can you make sure that you're being adaptable, making sure that you obviously drive that demand, and also the fact that, you know, I mentioned earlier about that digital acceleration. Especially if you're like a smaller brand or like just starting out, everyone's going to be on digital now. Like it used to be maybe like 20-30%. It's probably surpassed like above the line spend now. So I think we've also seen it probably more so in Europe and the UK. Like media costs have gone up. Like there's no way of getting around that unless you're doing things that are a bit different. So yeah, I would say that, you know, you have to think about your connections planning, and you have to think about omni-channel as well, and making sure you show up in the right places to try and cut through the noise, because it is difficult.
No, that's so true. And to guess, kind of going back to my full funnel point made earlier, how would you say you get a client, like I said, client X, successfully from A to B?
I mean, I like the way I see it in terms of like full funnel is that there's typically like 3 types of customers, audiences, consumers, clients, however you want to call them. Is that you have people that know your brand and are your customers. They're your like hard and fast customers. Then you have people that know of your brand, but they're not buying from you, or not using your service, or not purchasing. And then you have people that are effectively don't even know who your brand are. So really there's only 3 core things that you need to be able to do and speak to them differently. And then it's about making sure that you show up where their preferences are, what are their behaviour, and that goes back to, as I say, ensuring that you have the right consumer insights, you know who your prospect clients are, and then who you're also up against.
Sure. So how important is building out a profile for your target audience?
It is and it isn't. I think it really helps building personas, but it's not the be and end all, in the sense of it's good to be able to identify different attributes, common interests. Like one thing that we would say is about like understanding what the passionate communities are within your big audiences. So using like, I don't know, luxury fashion as an example, or luxury retail, you have luxury buyers, but you have, you know, them subgroups. You have like Gen Z within that, you have people that are interested in sustainability, you have like the older affluent shopper. So it's really a case of understanding those subsets and those communities, and making sure that, you know, you understand differences. And really it's also global and local. You you have your brand message in terms of global, but really resonating and speaking to them on a local approach. And also, you know, that goes into East and West. Like West versus East is very different, and it's about getting that balance of culturally relevant but still authentic. But yeah, that's what you kind of need to build out. What about you? I mean, you obviously must see that come through in your briefs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with regards to profiling, my thing is kind of flashing back to what you said earlier about insights and doing the research before you get into that planning stage. So, you know, I'm going to be super stereotypical here, but it's like a personal bugbear of mine back in the day. But like if you're a sports brand and you're promoting a pair of football boots released, right? So the first thing I used to get through was like, my audience is like boys and men, perhaps like, you know, young up to maybe the age of like 20, 25 or whatever. Like I grew up playing football, so it personally offends me. But the realistic side of it is like actually for the younger audience, the parents are probably, or the brothers, the sisters, whatever, are buying it. And also like, why exclude people from that because of your assumption of who your target audience is? Like maybe your research is actually fed back like, this is predominantly my audience. That's great, but why not also expand your reach to other areas where you're also going to get revenue? So for me, it's like, it's not that it's wrong, it's just that it could be better. And so just advising on that. And that's really where I think DSPs have kind of evolved that way of thinking. It's moving from, you know, rather than being in a specific environment only, and that's all you do, actually, well, look at the behaviors, look at where people are moving, how they're acting, how they're researching and buying, and being able to actually make a plan off the back of that information. So you've got a lot more data to play with.
Yeah, I mean, even you mentioned there around like different types of media, you know, connected TV, audio, like that has definitely been like more newer channels, I would say, in programmatic. Like, how are you advising your partners like myself to approach and use these?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen it grow here in the UK and EMEA. Obviously, the US is probably significantly ahead of the rest of the world. Just in regards to scale, really, like the opportunities, you know, they've got certain things that we don't have over here in the UK in regards to streaming channels yet. But also the uptake of these channels since the investment shift, I guess, especially in the way we live our lives at the moment, like that shift that happened in the pandemic with the amount of content being viewed and being viewed in different ways, or more so in particular ways. Do you know what I mean? So the growth has kind of started to come in fruition with that. And I think it's that whole thing as well about, okay, so connected TV as an example isn't perhaps the biggest opportunity, but how can that support what you're doing? How can that make an impact and make sure that, you know, I think the biggest thing is to consider when you're putting plans together is, where are my audience? At what points can I get to them, and where am I going to be most effective at doing that? And that's why I think, like, you know, the benefits of having these different channels and being able to then look across and see what works and what doesn't is key. And just understanding, you know, what is their likely frame of mind? Are they going to be someone that's too engaged in what they're doing, therefore isn't going to potentially buy that? Or is your brand going to suddenly be in someone's head for the first time, that then when they get retargeted perhaps elsewhere, it then, you know, you know the game. Okay, so I guess broad questions.
Okay.
What tee you up? What do you think the future of advertising has in store for us?
Advertising has in store. I mean, to be honest, like, we see more and more now that it's like multi-dimensional. Like, you know, you can say about like the recent Meta brand name from a big someone. But yeah, the metaverse is growing in the sense of, you know, the virtual world. I think that it's also like multi-sensory. So we've seen it a little bit with like out-of-home placements. You know, can you see it? Can you then smell it? Is it sight, see, sound, and that type of thing? I think that, you know, consumers want like impact. They want purpose. They want to make change, especially within Gen Z. They want to be able to rebuild society, and making sure that, you know, like brands are taking accountability for that. I think, you know, I mentioned content again, but content marketing, you know, micro influencers, really local, really authentic. I think that would be really important. I think, you know, the rise of video, I think video is the future, in the sense of everything's done through video. So I think that video will surpass all digital channels. And then, as I mentioned, like the duality of in real life and also the metaverse. And I think things like augmented reality is here to stay, digital screens, and that kind of interconnection and integration between advertising is definitely not siloed. It's definitely not one touch point. It's a kind of multitude of things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, just to touch on sustainability, I guess. So, I mean, more as anything, just obviously following the news that's going on at the moment with everything that's happening. But I mean, do you think that in the coming years, or, you know, months, I guess would be what we want to see is, you know, decisions about what DSPs or what partners you want to work with in the future will include a decision on that, will include like their commitment to sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm nodding because it's already happening. Like,
great.
Especially some of our kind of more future-facing bigger brands that we work with, they're already thinking about how can they make conscious decisions on their media, like programmatic. Have they got green targets? Are they like thinking about their carbon footprint? How are we, like, even down to like something like buying electrical taxis for out of home as opposed to normal taxis, or buying screens that, you know, have air pollution that comes out of them. I definitely think that it's something that, as you say, it's very time considering it that COP26 has kicked off this week. But yeah, I think that more and more we're going to see brands like, and agencies and people like yourself, like, take it to the next level to kind of do some good along the way.
Great. Well, I think that's probably a nice note to leave things on. We've managed to scram about 9 minutes left for some questions. So give me 2 seconds. Let me just see what we've got. I will be sending these over. Obviously, as we said, if we don't have a chance to get to any particular questions in this, then we will follow up straight after. So just bear with us. But okay, here's a good one. So, Okay, question for you, Leslie. We've recently started our first TV campaign. Could you help us to build a strategy out to use this across digital in an effective way?
Well, firstly, congrats, whoever that is. I mean, it kind of teed me up in the sense of video is the future, in the sense of how do you tell your brand story? You know, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and I think that's very powerful. So you're already on your way. But I think also thinking about how you can leverage these assets across digital, like you mentioned, obviously your creative studio are able to adapt TV assets and make sure that, you know, these are compatible with digital formats. I think also the fact that, you know, consider how you're buying your TV. So, and obviously it's your first campaign, but are you buying it linear? Is it over the top? Is it connected? Like thinking about, you know, even video on demand, is linear TV, if it is how you've kicked it off, the right way to buy your TV? Because, you know, we've alluded to the fact that you can do it programmatically, you can have data behind it, you can look at different like locations, time of day, different devices, making sure there's a demographic behind it. But yeah, I would just say that it's really important to make sure that it's native to the environment, as opposed to being like looking like a TV ad. You know, you need to think about that sight, see, and sound, as I mentioned.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, what else we got here? What's the, oh, I can fill this one if you want. So what's the minimum we would need to spend to get results from a DR campaign?
I was gonna say, I would not be able to answer that.
So, I mean, for me, like obviously a great thing for me working at StackAdapt is that we go to market with no, like, you know, it's like a pay-as-you-go model. So there's no monthly minimums, no commitments. However, I do very much, dependent on the KPIs, the outcomes wanted, the objectives set for the campaign, will always recommend what is going to actually make a difference. Because for me, there's nothing worse than a client, you know, dropping a few grand and then that doesn't actually equate to anything real at the end of it, because you know, you've not been able to hit enough of the market that you've been reaching. Like maybe if your audience is super niche and you're being super specific, it's slightly different, but I would always say it's a campaign by campaign basis, and just ask the questions, and your partners should be able to advise you as to what is going to be the right amount to kind of build you out from a test stage, and then you can kind of move on from there based on success. Hopefully that answers your question. Right, we've just got 5 minutes left, so we'll just see if we can squeeze a couple more in here. How can I stay up to date with all the latest ways to reach my target audience? So yeah, I think we touched on this, but I would say, you know, support from your platform partners like myself, your agency if you work with one. Obviously, you know, we feed a lot of information to them. They do a lot of their own research and have their own teams involved for that as well. And we also tend to have access to platforms that can help pull data and insights and info that we look to share between us. So yeah, like always try and use this as a resource. Like I'm sure any of your partners are always happy to be of service in that sense. But I would also recommend just staying on top of things like trade press.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say, like for me, I subscribe to so many different, like I almost like every morning you try and just do, even if it's 1 or 2 emails that come into your inbox, is just like read some, like get up to speed, because it can like spark a food for thought. You can see who are doing certain things, like what kind of insights that are coming to market. One trick that I actually have is that I use Google Alerts, and basically put it, this is like genuinely a tip.
Nerd alert.
If I've got any of my clients, I set them up on Google Alerts, so that I can see any press that they're involved in, any information. So anytime they're mentioned on any domain, it has a Google alert, and then that way I'm able to then see like where, and also their main competitors. But yeah, that's just a little tip.
Nice. But I would also say, I think you mentioned it earlier, like platforms and businesses like ourselves are the ones developing this technology to bring to market. So we should be the ones that have that information first. So if you're looking for that media first, or you're looking for, you know, where is the industry going, what's the next opportunity, like, you know, that the more contact you have with your partners, the better, and the more we'll be able to knowledge share. But a lot of that responsibility should also be on our shoulders.
Yeah.
You know what, with only a few minutes left, I think we're probably best to wrap things up there. So thank you so much for all of you that attended. I hope that was interesting and of use to all of you. Really appreciate your time. From Leslie and I, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. It was fun.
It's a nice treat to be in an office with, I haven't got to pay for my own heating. It's lovely. But yeah, have a great day, everybody. And apologies if we didn't get to your questions, but we will follow up with anything that come through that we weren't able to get to. And there'll be a copy of this recording sent out as well. So thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.